This episode of Bulletproof Cash Flow is brought to you by Realty Dynamics. Learn how people like you can build substantial passive income while creating wealth for the long term through real estate investing. Visit rdyne.com. That's RDYNE.com.
What I did is I just like you go to school, I started researching and underwriting and figuring out the process. And I literally spent 2 years figuring this out. Now, I was buying stuff in that time, and that was part of the way that I learned was by buying stuff on an inclining market. And by buying things, I learned the process. But I was super conservative, and I was looking at deals. I was traveling. 90% of what I was doing was what most people would consider a waste of time.
Working because you want to, not because you have to, is financial freedom. And we want to help you create that. Welcome to the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. We're going to teach you how to achieve lifetime financial freedom through real estate investment. Your host is a multifamily syndicator and property developer. He's done deals reaching into the hundreds of millions of dollars. You'll hear from experts in all aspects of real estate investment, finance, development, and management. Everything you need is right here. This is the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. And this is your host, Augustino Pintus.
Hey everyone, it's Augustino. It's not just the big numbers that define success in real estate development. It's also growing your knowledge base, building partnerships, and serving others in your own way. Now, our next guest knows all about this. He began his career in direct sales, where he learned about team building, sales techniques, and real estate concepts. Now, after years of hard work with minimal return, he found his success by the mid-20s by finally managing his own six-figure business. Now, in the late 90s, he began to explore businesses outside direct sales, and it was that effort that really yielded him founding a construction company, which he took to 7 figures in less than 1 year. Now, understanding the simple concepts and benefits of leasing real estate, he purchased a multi-use retail and commercial property for his business. And from those transactions, he found the confidence that allowed him to accumulate millions of dollars of residential and commercial real estate holdings. Now, over the course of his career, our next guest has founded multiple high-success businesses. In 2003, he founded Jacob Realty, and he went on to start several other companies in several other industries. Now, in the span of his career, he's done over $200 million of in-house transactions, $52 million in 2021 alone. So with all that, I'd like to welcome Jerome Maldonado to the show. Jerome, thanks for coming on, man.
Augustino, how are you this morning? Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm awesome. Any day above ground is a good day to be alive, right?
It's great. Sure is.
It's great. Now, guys, if you like what Jerome has to say, you can reach him via his contact page at jeromemaldonado.com. I'll include a link in the description as well. Okay, Jerome, go ahead and tell us more about your journey. How'd you get started with all this?
On accident, in real perspective, in all honesty. I was going up the traditional route, obviously, just going to school, going to college, like my parents had instructed me to do. And I was on a scholarship wrestling at the university, and it was my means to get through school. And so after my third year in college, I stumbled across a network marketing company in June, right after the semester had ended. And I was heading out to Mexico. And I was working in a pharmacy, and my boss told me, if you go to Mexico for a week, when you come back, we'll probably fill your tech position as a pharmacy technician. I said, no problem. I needed a break mentally, everything. I was just burnt. And I just wanted to come back, work in a gym and push weights and work as a trainer. And I just want to have fun that summer. And the first ad I answered said health and fitness, not knowing it was a direct sales and network multi-level marketing company selling water filters in the 90s when there was no water filters. And I'll tell you, I bought it, hook, line, and sinker, not the water filter, but the opportunity, the financial opportunity. And that was the start to my sales career. Didn't realize I could earn income off of other people and employ other people to make me money. And I was hooked. First time I saw it. And I went back to school, spent a full year in school trying to build my direct sales distributorship, and it wasn't working real good. And so that next summer, I went in full time, took off to the East Coast, went to Virginia, and I started building sales training centers. And I was horrible at it. I made a little bit of money here and there, not enough to live, struggled financially, ruined my credit doing so. But after about 2.5 years in the industry, I figured it out. When I figured it out, I started making some real money, some good, strong six figures in the 90s was really good. And I became a trainer for the company. That's where I landed up making a lot of verticals in my life, mentally and knowledge-wise. And then in 1997, unfortunately, the FTC shut us down. They went and cleaned house on a lot of multi-level marketing companies in the late 90s. And I was kind of jumping from industry to industry. And I found myself back in college, finishing my last year of my degree. And that's where I kind of dibble-dabbled in construction, ironically enough, because of my brother-in-law. And I had never done construction. So it was a new little endeavor for me. But I knew how to sell. And I think that's the key component, Augustino, was the sales aspect to my base of my career. And because of that base, and I tell my wife, I said, the kids have to do something in sales, because when you learn how to communicate and talk with people and sell on a real basis with personalities and with emotion, that's really the pivotal piece of what our success started with. And so with that foundation, I was able to go out and do $1.7 million in gross sales my first year in construction. And it was truly because of the way I knew how to market my business and myself. And that perlayed my construction career in 1998. And hence, I started making some capital. And in 1999, I started investing it in real estate. Not because I knew anything about real estate, not because I thought it was going to be an industry that I was going to consider myself a guru or a professional in. I just wanted a hard asset, something that I can see that was tangible with the money I was making. I didn't want to be stuck in the same position I was in 1997. And so I just started buying rental homes. And that turned into all of this in all reality. It turned into everything that we're doing today. I fell in love with the industry and fell in love with the game in all reality. And we've dabbled in a lot of different areas of real estate. And we've went through some ups and downs in real estate. We've learned a whole ton. Especially going through the recession. And now we're sitting in unprecedented times. I think we're moving into a stagflation market and another recession. So we're moving into a recession and stagflation, it looks like, almost at the exact same time. And so we've set ourselves up in a very unique time. And here we sit moving into 2022, 2023. And I think we have some opportunity coming our way, but I also think there's going to be a little bit of a bloodbath in the mix of all of what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. I guess the first thing to reiterate, the underlying component is your experience in sales. I think that many people, I remember when I was growing up, the sales folks were always the bane of everyone's existence, right? It's like, oh no, not these guys. It's like they always, even TV portrays sales as a slimy sales guy. And I think that if you're very good at sales, you can pretty much, it's not manipulation, it's not manipulation, but it's about persuading someone else to do something that's going to benefit them and benefit you at the same time, right? Because it's one of those skills that needs to be cultivated and learned, and you spent a great deal of time. That's I would say that's the underlying part of your success, is you became really, really good at sales, I would say, right?
Correct. Absolutely. I mean, even to this day, everything that we do, from negotiating with municipal leadership in areas that we're developing in, dealing with employees, negotiating contracts, settlements, all of that stuff, it all comes down to sales and the psychology of selling and knowing people and influencing people. And, there's a lot in there, and it's loaded. But when you do it for a long time and you get good at it, it's priceless. It'll generate capital for you forever, and it really protects you financially.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think it's one of those things that for anyone listening, if you have not made sales a part of who you are, you got to learn your sales techniques. Yeah, you have to. It's going to help you raise capital. It's going to help you convince that buyer or the seller to do business with you. It is a real big deal. It's a really important aspect of it. Hey, Augustino here, and I would love to connect directly with you. Text the word books to 844-428-1344 to receive weekly book recommendations from me. So cool. Okay, so you started doing the single family thing. It's kind of like the same way I did. I had no idea about commercial deals. Like, how did you figure out how to even do a commercial deal that was even a viable option for you? Like, how'd you figure that out?
I was building training centers in the 90s when I was in network marketing. What we would do, the old traditional multi-level marketing was go sit down in Denny's restaurants or hotel lobbies and pitch your deal. And Bill, who was one of my mentors, he said, we're doing this out of training centers. We're going to do this professional. We're going to put on a suit and tie instead of going to a Denny's restaurant or a hotel lobby. We're going to do it out of what we call training centers. So we would sign leases on commercial buildings, and we would put phone lines, and we would bring distributors into our offices and pitch them our sales opportunity. Now, when we did that, we'd charge people desk rent. And this was my first means of generating revenue in direct sales, was through bringing in distributors, first selling them on the deal. They see the opportunity. They ask us how they get started. We would lease to them desk rent. And so they would take a desk space for $500 a month or half a desk for $250 a month. So everything that we did when we were working on facilitating our lease were based on how many people, how many butts do we need in the chairs, and how many phone lines do we need connected to get this rent paid. And so we started simply renting desk space, and it became profitable. And our profitability truly came from renting desk space, and that's what allowed me to make a living during such hard financial times when I was trying to figure out the business. So when I came back and I opened up my construction company, I had the same concept in mind, because my mindset was always on, how do I get free rent for myself? How do I get enough desk people in here paying desk rent that I not only got free rent, but I made money on top of my rent that I was paying to be able to make a living? And so when I opened up the construction company, I was running it out of my house, and my neighbors absolutely hated me, and they were complaining to the city. The city came in. They gave us a notice that we had to vacate because we were running a commercial business out of a residential zoned area. And so they took us to court, and we obviously knew what the result of going to court was. It was going to be, we have to find a commercial building. And so that's what we did. In the interim time, when the complaint came in, I started looking for commercial space. And because of my old school, base knowledge was, let's go find a building that we can house our equipment, our business, but let's get it bigger than what we need. Let's lease it and then rent it out to other people, and let's get free rent, because that's what I had then, was free rent. So the same concept that I had from doing network marketing and doing sales centers was the exact same concept I used in my construction company. And so I went and found this old distressed building. My credit at that time was still shot. And so I did a little owner finance deal with a gentleman who inherited this building from his dad. He wasn't a real estate guy. The building was boarded up, but it had good bones. And we simply went in there. We put new storefront glass on it, a few $1,000s into the roof and into the cosmetic exterior, gutted the inside, and we threw up some partition walls. And we had multiple units. I housed my business, put the equipment in the back, and I leased the rest of it. And in 6 months, we had a cash flowing property. And it was, so when I looked at it, I said, man, this is cool. I got free rent. Not only did I have free rent, but I'm making about $2,000 a month on top of what I am paying. My mortgage payment is, my insurance, and all my expenses. And so we parlayed that. We just pushed that out, and I started doing more of them. I did one, and then about a year later, I did a second one, and then I did a third one, and then I started building them, new construction. Now, in the time prior, I started building single-family homes back in 1999. We started buying land and building houses on top of pouring concrete for our concrete company. So we had a lot of moving pieces here. There was a lot going on at the exact same time, and I was motivated. I was very assertive in my direction, and I was dabbling, and I had my hands in a lot of the same industry, but a lot of different areas of the same industry. So I was pouring concrete, doing construction. I was buying land. I was building single-family homes instead of buying them and renting them, old. And then I was buying old distressed buildings. And then I thought, well, what the heck? I'm building houses. What's the difference? Let's build some buildings. And I started buying land and building little retail centers, little 10,000, 20,000 square foot retail centers. And we pushed this business model out all the way to the recession until 2008. And that's when things shifted a little bit.
Now, before we get into that, because I definitely want to explore that, sounds like you're doing a lot of different things. You're doing the concrete, you're doing the land acquisition, the actual building itself. I mean, all these things are very hard to do. Each individual vertical is tough to do by itself, let alone doing multiples. Like, how'd you figure out what to even focus on? Like, what sort of team did you have to back you up? Because, I mean, the way I figure is that, at least the way we're doing it anyway, it's like we have separate land guys that we deal with on almost exclusive basis. We let them go and focus on land acquisition, then we put a deal together and then we build on it. So how'd you figure that out?
I think I did it a little bit backwards. I did a lot myself back then. When I say a lot myself, I had a lot of in-field employees. So I had superintendents. I had field workers, guys that were laboring, doing concrete work, form setting, and all of that stuff. So I had in-field guys. Didn't have office and administrative work. My girlfriend, who's my wife now, she helped me with a lot of it. And I would literally, I was burning the candle at both ends of the stick. I was probably getting 4 hours of sleep. I was young. I was in my 20s. And I'll tell you, we ran the business ourselves. I was doing the marketing, and I would go out and I'd even get my in-laws, who at the time were not my in-laws, and I'd get some kids from down from the wrestling and the karate dojo, and we'd go hand out flyers on the weekends. We would pump out ads in the yellow pages. The internet was brand new back then. There was no online marketing like there is today, and so through the means of yellow pages and literally door-to-door advertising with door flyers, we went out and built a business. I was doing 100% of the estimates. And so I would go out all weekend and I would market. And then I'd stay up late at night and I would do bids, and I would do commercial bids, and I would do residential bids. And I found land. When you talk about land acquisitions, the way I got into building homes was there was a guy on Harley that would show up, and I was doing this foundation on a house, and I would go check on my guys. I didn't do a lot of infield work. I was kind of hands off. Now I would if I had to, but I had learned otherwise. And so I would spend most of my time while the guys were working. I'd go check on them, and then I'd go do estimates, and then I'd come back, check on them. And I was actually my first year still in college. I was still in school, so I would literally wake up and be on the job sites by 6 a.m. I would get everybody going. Then I would run to class by 8:30. And I would take a class, go back to the job sites. Then I go take an estimate, then go back to school. And I got my vehicle towed, I don't know how many times, for parking in the administrative parking lot. And I was back and forth. And then this gentleman, one day when I was doing concrete work, I would see him show up when I was there. And ironically enough, we show up at the same time. And I always looked stressed out, and I was running like a chicken without a head. And he looked calm, cool, and collective, and just clean to a T, wearing like a Tommy Bahama shirt, buttoned down, roll up on his Harley with his rings on, and just looked, cleanly shaved, and just looked smooth, cool, just like the cool cat on the motorcycle, right? And he literally looked like that to me. And so one day I got to talking to him, and I said, "Hey," I said, "So you the builder here?" And he said, "Yes." And I said, "How much are you going to make on this build?" And he goes, and he was this heavy Australian accent. He goes, "Mate, if I don't make between $80,000 to $100,000, it's not worth my time. I sure as hell better make $80,000 to $100,000. And so I got to thinking, I go, shit, this guy's going to make $80,000 to $100,000. I told him, "How long will it take you to build this house?" And he goes, 4, maybe 5 months, not a day over 5 months. And I said, so I started thinking about it, and I never complicated things. It was as simple was. When I saw something, I just implemented. His house was right here that he was building. I was pouring a foundation for this house right on the side of him, and there was a vacant lot right here. So I went and bought the vacant lot, literally 2 houses down from him, and I said, what the hell, I'm going to figure this out. And I bought that piece of land, and I made about $83,000. I built the house out in 5 months. I never built a house before. And my dad helped me build an Excel spreadsheet. He was an accountant. My dad was very analytical and helped me build out an Excel spreadsheet. And I didn't complicate the process. I just built it out. And I was doing these little retail centers based off on the side. And I was doing them in the winter when we were slower. So in the wintertime, when my work slowed down, I used the retail centers as a tool. And where most people get scared about getting involved in real estate, I just looked at it as a tool. I said, damn, if I pick up an old distressed property in like September, October, November. I close on it right before the winter months. When we slow down, I could put my crews working on renovating this in our slow months in November, December. Because once Thanksgiving slows down, comes around, our residential crews get slow. And so if we just pound this thing out in November, December, January, you get through the holidays and I'm done, that gives me 3 months to really hammer this out. I can put this thing for rent or sell it by February, March. And so that was my business model. I did 15 years of that. Every year for 15 years, I bought either 1 or 2 retail centers every single winter. And I didn't even think about it as like an investment. I didn't think about it as complicated. I just thought about it as a tool to keep my men busy and generate whatever capital I could through the winter months. And it turned into a lot, and that's really how all of this transpired all at the same time. Was I was using each piece of it as a tool to continue growing my business and help me with the businesses that I actually had at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it took a great deal of sacrifice, a lot of getting your hands dirty, a lot of guerrilla marketing, a lot of not easy work. And that's unfortunately for, I started off very similarly. I mean, I wasn't handing out flyers or anything else like that, but I mean, I tell you, I had some tough times starting up, right? Didn't have the right mentors. Sounds like we didn't exactly have the right mentors either, really specifically showing you what to do. It just grinded it out.
I did.
Grinded
it really did.
Right? Yeah. So mentoring, of course, is a big deal when it comes to this types of business. I want to take a pause from today's show to share something that I've been encountering. As I speak to many investors, there's this concern, and the concern is centered around the inflation we've been experiencing and the devaluation of our currency. Now, we've seen some of the highest inflationary periods over the past 30 years. That's up over 8%. Economists actually believe that inflation is closer to 20%. Some say it's even more. Now, what does this mean for you? Well, it means that money that is sitting in your bank account or self-directed IRA that's not invested in physical assets that hedge against inflation are losing buying power. That means that every minute, every second, that dollar is becoming less valuable. You see this every day. You see this in the groceries you buy, the gasoline you buy, everyday items that you're buying on a daily basis are becoming more and more expensive, and you're using a less powerful dollar to buy these items, meaning that dollar is losing value if it isn't put into a property that produces cash flow, just like real estate does. Now, our team here at Bulletproof Cashflow has put together a series of weekly webinars that cover real estate investing like multifamily, net lease, and real estate development. Now, these are purely educational webinars. In these webinars, we talk about why real estate offers a powerful opportunity right now and why it makes sense to invest in these assets today. So if you're interested in real estate or want to have the opportunity to get involved as a hedge against inflation yourself, I encourage you to go to bulletproofcashflow.com/webinars. That's bulletproofcashflow.com/webinars. Now you go there, these webinars are 45 minutes and they cover different topics every week. We go over the things you need to know to avoid some of the common pitfalls when it comes to investing while getting you prepared to invest your paper dollars into a real physical asset. Now, if you can't make the webinars, just go ahead and register and we will send you a recording that you can watch at any time. And by the way, these webinars are entirely free. There's no cost to you. This is just something that we do to educate our folks out there. So if you're enjoying this episode, please like and subscribe to Bulletproof Cashflow. It helps the channel tremendously when you do. Now let's go ahead and get back to the show. So great. So now you're going to the '99 recession. The first, I guess, not as bad as 2008, but '99 was a mild recession. Right? I think it lasted 18 months or 16 months or something, right? Something like that. How did you navigate that? How'd you navigate it? And what sort of parallels do you see back then and today?
Okay, so I'm going to tell you exactly how I navigated that. I didn't pay one bit attention to it. If you're starting now and you have nothing, then you're perfect. You're starting off at the bottom of nothing, right? So when you have nothing, like I always said, a big percentage of zero is zero, right? So I had nothing. There was only one way, and that was up for me at that time. And so I had people tell me that I remember I worked at a grocery store when I was in in high school and in my early years of college, and I was an assistant manager at a grocery store for Kroger's, for Smith's grocery store. And I remember going in to the grocery store, and I'd go see my old friends sometimes, and they were never positive. My old manager, I remember his name, Sam Lackey, and Sam was like, Jerome, do you know how many construction companies are out there? You're going to go out of business. He goes, we're in a recession. How are you going to open up a business in a downturn market? And I didn't know what that meant, right? Like I didn't know what that meant. I just figured, I mean, I have nothing. If someone buys from me something, it's better than what I have now, which is absolutely nothing. And so I didn't think about the recession. I think people that are just getting started right now, as we move into a recessionary market, don't even think about it. Like, why even think about it? There's only one way you can go, and that's up. The people that really have something to worry about are those of us who have businesses and assets, and we're moving and hustling and shaking. We have liabilities that potentially, we have assets that can potentially become liabilities, and we're the ones that have to pay attention. That's why 2008 was almost catastrophic for me, because I had stuff at that time. 1999, no problem. I had nothing to lose, everything in the world to gain. If you have nothing, no assets right now, you're in a perfect place to just go out and do. And if you do, you can go up from the recession with the market, and you're in a perfect place to get started. No better time.
Yeah. So what sort of opportunities are you seeing right now then when it comes to the real estate market?
Well, like I've always said, in times of financial distress, there's opportunity. Where other people lose, you win. And so plain and simple, we're looking, we don't know exactly what stretch of financial, what type of stress and financial push people are going to feel. Obviously, when interest rates go up and people are on fluctuating mortgages, there's going to be blood in the streets, right? Because people can only afford and be pushed so much. And so that's why fluctuating mortgages are always scary. I try not to get into them unless I know I'm going to get in and out. But I try not to hold on to them. What happens, I think, sometimes is people think they're going to get in or out, or they only see today and they get into them going, damn, I have a really good interest rate, because typically fluctuating rate mortgages are lower than prime. And then all of a sudden, when prime is pushed and people go in, there's a vertical of their fluctuating rate mortgages. So I think that's going to be a huge one. The rates start fluctuating. They can't refinance fast enough, and then they're stuck. Or they can't find an institution that wants to take on that asset class. We're racing. We have developments under construction. We underwrote with a compression in mind, so I think we're at a good place. I think our appraisals are still going to come in strong. We understand as developers that when we have a stabilized property, we typically do what's called the cash out refinance, and we take out a ton of equity, and then we just keep the asset and let it cash flow. Now, in a compressed market, typically, if the appraised values of the asset go down, when we stabilize the asset, we typically don't have as much equity anymore. Now, as long as we have the equity to stabilize, we're okay. We'll sit on the asset, we'll cash flow, and at some point in time in the future, we'll refine, and we'll get a better interest rate, and we'll get cash out. So where our variance really is that we get less cash out, okay? Now, because we have the innate ability to raise capital, it's always nice to have more cash in your bank account, right? But no one's gonna shed a tear for us. Instead of getting 10 million, we can only get 4 million, out of a deal. So my whole thing is I just know that I have to sit on my assets, and that's the reality of where we're going. And so don't be selfish. I don't plan on living on that. That's stuff that we will cash out on in some time. And for now, we'll just enjoy the cash flow of the assets and just sit on them, and that's the whole thing. Just sit on them. We're not in a position where we have to sell. We build to keep, and all the stuff that we have that's retail is paid off. I've never leveraged it again since 2008. I could have, but it's paid off. We don't have a lot of liability. And the liability we do have are in assets that are cash producing. So we just sit back and we continue running our businesses, and we continue doing what we do, Augustino, and we just wait out Mother Time.
Yeah, and I think that's a very smart move, right? It's kind of like the reason why we're doing sort of something very similar to that. We're getting into stabilized assets. We're underwriting very, very, very conservatively. If we're unable to push the rents up all the way, max it out, and then pull a refi and slam it out for, for maximum leverage. It's a very wise thing to do there. And on our development side, and we have we have one big project, the Rockefeller building I mentioned last time in the green room. But this one that I'm in right now here, this should be hopefully a fairly quick turnaround. We're going to be a lot of resources on this one, but it's like we only have the one. Everything else is fairly small, comparatively speaking, but. It's more like you have those guys that are, in my opinion, overpaying for stuff. And we talked a little bit about the guys going into these super white hot markets, overpaying for stuff where rents are $1,200 a unit and expecting some monster return to come out after 16 months. It's dangerous. It's gambling almost, in my opinion.
It is. And we're going to see, you know what? Going to happen, Augustino, is we're going to be able to buy that stuff. That's why, like you were asking, you were saying about being in Cincinnati and Cleveland and maybe migrating out of there and not going to the big states. Well, I'm starting to underwrite and look at the big states. I'm looking at Texas and Florida and these places. And the reason why those are the areas I believe that people have overpaid. And I like Texas only because I've watched its growth over the course of time. And in spite of its massive growth, especially like Austin, for example, I'm not going to go into the Austin market. I think the vertical of appreciated values there are ridiculous. And I think that the market in Austin being a very unique one, I think they'll weather it. I don't know how well they'll weather it, but I think they'll weather it okay compared to some of the other markets that saw extreme verticals just because of their economic strength. But I look at the rest of the Texas market, Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, and I still look at the values, and I look at what we're doing in Phoenix, and I look at where Texas is, and there's a huge variance between Class C, Class A assets and what the values of those assets are. And I still see a huge spread capability of growth in the Texas market. So I'm still going in there. In fact, I'll be up there on Thursday, and I'm underwriting those markets because I think that people that have overpaid, rents haven't appreciated and went up as much as they have in other areas across the country because housing is very affordable in Texas. I think we still have some upside. But I do believe that for people like you and I, these people that have overpaid, we're going to see opportunity. And, they're not going to be able to, they've overpaid, they've done value add, and then if they get stuck and they can't refi, then there's no upside. There's no internal rate of return for them. And so them and their investors are really sitting between a rock and a hard place, and they either have to sell and compromise their equity. And that's where we come in, that equity spread. We pick that up at a reasonable price, and we're able to walk into something where that equity growth is, and equity potential is on our side, not theirs. And so I think there's going to be some opportunities like that. And I'm looking forward to them. As much as I hate saying, I don't want to see people get bloodied up. I know that feeling, and I hate to see it, but it's inevitable, right? It's going to be out there, and it's going to be real. And I can't fix it, but I can buy it. And so part of fixing it is by buying it, because now I stabilize the market instead of letting an asset sit just financially or physically distressed. And so one man's distress is another man's fortune. And I think we're going to see a lot of opportunity in that regards.
Yeah, no, I believe so as well. I mean, we're sitting here in mid 2022, and 2 years from now, 24 months from now, it could very well happen. But I mean, it sounds to me like what you're doing is you're getting in there, you're understanding the market, which is huge, is critical. I think people underestimate the criticality of that, which is the reason why we're hyper-focused. Like our team is hyper-focused here in Cleveland, because we really want to understand this market, where the upside is, all that fun stuff. You're doing the same thing, and you're starting way, way, way early, which is super. It's very smart. How are you doing with lining up the lending side of things? Assuming you're using lending, because I'm going to guess you're using lending. You're not going to use entirely all your own cash.
No, we won't. So same way I did in 2008. I don't worry about the lending. I don't have control of that. I don't even know if they know how they're going to handle the lending. Institutions I'm talking about. So I'm not worrying about that right now. And the reason is because I'm smart enough to know that there's a financial institution out there that'll want our assets. If we underwrite them right and you think like a bank and you think like a financial institution, if the numbers make sense, banks just don't stop doing business. You don't, because of hard times, grocery stores don't just shut down and then reopen when times are good. You don't just halt and say, oh, well, hold on, there's a recession. Let me shut my doors for 2 years and then I'll reopen up when things are good. Banks don't do that, right? Like the way banks work is by lending money. So I always tell people you have to have something, the means to financial lucrativeness and lending is in the entitlements of any project and the underwriting of any project. So what I mean by that is if the deal makes sense, it makes sense financially. If the deal does not make sense, like I'll give you an example, Augustino. I had a guy come up to me the other day and he's like super excited talking. I mean, I can't even understand half of what he's saying. He's so overly excited. And he's like, I got this deal, blah, 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 blah. And he goes, it's going to be vertical and it's going to be beautiful. And he's like painting this picture for me. And I said, great. I said, do you have the plans? Do you have like where are your floor plans? Where is your entitlements? And, oh, yeah. And then he just completely ignores me. And then I'm busy, just like you are. And I said, hey, bud, I go, look, stop. You're killing me. I got stuff to do. Where are your prints? Where are your entitlements? I said, get me that. That's what I want. I have nothing until I have that. And then he continued again. And I said, look, I'm done. Get me something tangible. When I have something tangible that I can put value on, that's when I want to look at it. Everything that keeps coming out of your mouth right now is gibberish. I don't care about it. I need to see something that I can appraise, that I can underwrite, that I can hold value to, that I can compare it to what's going on in the market. And so when I think about financing, that's all I think about. Is I think about the value of entitlement, the value of underwriting. And this is where people miss the boat. They get excited about an opportunity, but they're not willing to put in the time to educate themselves. And one thing that I did is when I decided to get into this asset class, is as savvy as I was in retail and savvy as I was in single family development, and even when I got into buying fourplexes and distressed assets post-recession in 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, even as savvy as I was in that, I still didn't really understand how to underwrite correctly in multifamily until 2016. And so, Augustino, what I did is I just like you go to school, I started researching and underwriting and figuring out the process. And I literally spent 2 years figuring this out. Now, I was buying stuff in that time, and that was part of the way that I learned was by buying stuff on an inclining market. And by buying things, I learned the process. But I was super conservative, and I was looking at deals. I was traveling. 90% of what I was doing was what most people would consider a waste of time. I do endless trips to Phoenix and other places, and I was shopping these markets, meeting with brokers, and I felt like I was going to buy something, and then I'd buy nothing. And lo and behold, I was learning. And so all this time that you feel you're wasting, you're not wasting because you're learning. And I learned how to underwrite deals. And so it's going to be so important right now. If you want lending, you have to learn how the banks look at assets. And if you learn how the banks look at assets and how the banks lend money, and you have something that's appraisable and tangible and has returns, the banks will lend on it. So I don't worry about the banks. I'll worry about that when I find the right deal. When I find the right deal, I'll present it to 20 institutions if I have to. One of them, I promise, will pick it up because one of them is going to be lending. One of them will see the exact same thing I do. And hopefully they'll bring up to my attention concerns that I haven't considered. And then we'll even underwrite the deal even more stringent, and we'll have even a more viable opportunity. And so if people realize that the value is in the tangible asset and underwriting or the entitlements, the banking will follow, even in distressed times.
Yeah. Well, and part of it is having to do the homework, right? I mean, I think that people are, especially those that are just starting out, they don't quite understand what the type of homework that goes into it. Let's say, for instance, you want to put up, you find a great piece of land, busy spot that you know is going to be super for multifamily. Maybe 100 units might be perfect for that space, right? Well, if you put together a nice strong P&L, sources and uses, some comps in the area, not only on a per square foot, but also what the individual units will rent for, right? I mean, these are all different things that put into a nice spreadsheet that tell the story. Along maybe even bring on or hire on an architect to prepare some drawings. I mean, spend money on this, right? If you believe in the project that much, throw down some cash. If you don't, it's just a bunch bunch of hot
talking
air.
about with the gentleman who was just super excited. And that's exactly what we're doing. Like we have our Marana project over in Tucson right now. And, we understand we're going to be building this thing straight through a recession. I mean, hands down, we won't start on this till early 2023. But we're dumping $250,000 into entitlements. We believe in it. It's right down the street from the Ritz-Carlton. We did overpay for the land a little bit. We haven't closed on the land, but we control the land right now. And we know we've overpaid for the land a little bit, but we also understand how to develop in a cost-effective way because I've been a general contractor for many, many years. And so that's our benefit. I'm kind of the key component to that. So as long as God keeps me healthy and strong, we can get through this build, God willing, right? And so we are exactly doing what you're saying. We've retained an architect. We have preliminary drawings, and we're going to work with all our engineers. And we have already in communication with the municipality, and we feel we have a strong asset class that, in spite of a downturn, recessionary market, we're going to see some upside to our project.
Yeah, that's it. Now, I think we touched on mentoring a bit ago, right? What sort of mentors do you still use, or do you still use mentors today? And how did they help you get started and get to where you're at to where you are today?
Well, I think there's the rule of 33%, and the rule of 33% is the way you should really spend your life. 33% of your time should be spent with people that are what you would consider you mentoring them, people that are below where you're at. Then 33% of your time should be spent around people that have equality to where you're at. It's really important to be hanging out with people that have the same affluency, same direction as you, and the same mindset that you're going in. But it's also important to spend your time around 33% of the time around people and things that are above you, ahead of you, and are doing better financially than you are. And so how do you do that, right? Like, can you just go out and find people at 33% of the time that aren't? The answer is no, but you can through the means of social presence and books is really my mentors now. Although I have good partners that have diversification from me and even more fluency, some of them that I'm around. And so I get to see how they take things on and how we each individually, as successful as most of us have been, get to see how we negotiate deals, how we present ourselves and underwrite projects and opportunities and businesses. And so through some of our partnerships, I think there's some mentoring going on in there all the time. And I think they pick things up. It's reciprocating, right? They're picking things up from me. I'm picking things up from them. So the better you get, the better business partners you get. The better you get, the better the influences around you get. And so I think there's a reciprocating, as opposed to just pinpointing one mentor, there's some reciprocation that goes on as you migrate. And so a lot of my mentorship now comes less from books. I still watch a lot of stuff on YouTube. I really like Robert Kiyosaki a lot, so I watch a little bit of Robert's stuff. He's kind of the OG, right? He's kind of the godfather of all that we do. He's extreme in his beliefs, and I advocate for that stuff. I think as extreme as he is, you have to have that type of passion to be able to make moves in this world. He's bold, he's bold, and his beliefs are bold, very, very temperature taking for a lot of people. And I know he pushes friction in regards to people's beliefs. But I think you also have to consider when people are talking that bold, there's a reason. He's trying to get under people's skin on purpose because there's extremes to what's happening in the world, right? And most people don't appreciate those extremes. They want to come up with excuses instead of solutions. And I really think that a lot of those extremes come from being solution-based. And you got to push people's buttons to make changes in this world. And if you're not going to make any changes. It's a little bit of hard love. So I like Robert. I respect what he's done, and so I look at a little bit of that. I watch a little bit of Robert Kiyosaki, probably more so than anybody else, and I just continue pushing in business. But that rule of 33 is really the key. It's a key component to what I do.
Yeah, no, I'm very familiar with the rule of 33. It's one of Ty Lopez's things as well. So yeah, I'm a big student.
Yeah, he's one of my business partners. So we talk about that stuff.
Yeah, he's great. He's great. Now, the good thing about Robert Kiyosaki is that he was very polarizing when he put out that purple book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I think when that book came out, it challenged the norm, right? And I think he still continues to do the same thing, especially when he's talking about recession. He's talking about some of the things that's challenging people and making them think, and I think he's really trying to wake people up, to your point. He really is trying to get under their skin, right? That's a big part of getting the word out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he really is. And he's a great person. I got to sit down, talk with him and meet him a few weeks back. And, he's no different in person than he is on camera. In fact, I think he's even more direct and more crude in person, really adamant about the direction and thoughts that he talks about. So very admirable.
Yes.
And, I like that, especially out of his generation coming in, and those of us coming up towards that, and we're like right behind him, right? I think it's good leadership that we need to carry on and realize that being bold is important, because in order that, the people that create our country, our forefathers, they were bold. And I think that people, excuse my language, they pussyfoot around things. And I think it's important for us to continue advocating for what our forefathers fought for, right? And that's our freedom. And we're losing it. And it's scary if people, the softer people get, the more we lose. And so I think it's very important that we continue advocating for what our forefathers really went out and fought for.
Well, that's a whole other show, man.
That's a whole other subject. We can go off on a total tangent.
Right. Better not. But let's go. Let's go ahead and wrap it up then. So we covered a lot of stuff here today for that one person that's listening right now. Okay, maybe they're wondering what to do with their life. Maybe they're even wondering to get into development. What sort of bulletproof advice would you have to offer them?
Just get started. Action. I always say we're looking for action takers, because there's so many people that live on the fence, right? Never make that decision to go. I've always been an action taker. It's just an innate quality that I have. I thank God that I have it, especially when I see other people always contemplating and considering, reevaluating their decisions. I've always made decisions, and once I make decisions, I plummet forward with them, and I persistently go, in spite of sometimes knowing that the decisions I made were subpar, and I had to push through them. I continue following through on those. So I always tell people, become an action taker, and just take action and continue moving forward with things. And that is the best advice I could give people, is stop sitting on the fence, move forward.
Yeah, no, love it. That's how you do it. All right, guys. Well, if you want to reach out to Jerome, you can reach him via his website at jeromemaldonado.com. Remember, guys, get out there, take action. Even if you need to get a mentor or use a virtual mentor, right? Either way, I think that by educating yourself, putting yourself out there and really putting in the work, that's the only way you're going to see the success that you really want to have in your life. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next episode. Take care.
You've been listening to the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We know we had fun. Make sure to visit our Apple Podcast page and leave us a 5-star review. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. For real estate coaching, events, and resources, hit up bulletproofcashflow.com. Till next time.
No information in this episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this show are limited to accredited or sophisticated investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure and subscription documentation and subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice.